I used to work overnight security at a few different sites here in Chicago, and one of them was a large corporate office building. It was basically no different from any of the other overnight jobs I worked, but the thing that really sets it out is that I only worked there for 3 nights. 3 nights, and I noped out of there, settling for sucky unemployment before I could get another position. First night wasn't so bad, but the second started getting weird. Creaking noises coming from boiler rooms, static on the radio that none of the other guards seemed to hear. But the third night, I'm doing the rounds, checking doors, securing staircases, and I turned down this super long hallway, maybe 400 feet long, with offices and conference rooms lining both sides. Each has a window, some large and some small, and because they're dark, I can kind of see my reflection in them briefly as I walk past before they're cut off by solid wall. So it's like wall, reflection, wall, reflection, and so on and so forth. The last window I walk past, I swear to God I see someone walking behind me for a second. Like it was so real that I almost spun around in fright before I realized it was probably just a trick of the light or something. Anyway, I carry on the shift, pulling the same patrol about an hour later. I jokingly wonder if I'm going to see the ghost behind me again, and obviously I don't see anyone the second time, which confirms to me that it was just some illusion in my eyes. Then I actually get kind of curious and start wondering how it made that kind of double reflection in the first place, which is just about the time I look behind me to the piece of glass in the fire door, where my faint reflection looked like it has 2 heads. It was so weirdly subtle that I barely even noticed it, like the kind of thing you don't really notice at first, but when you do, you can't unsee it. And again, I swear to God it looked like I had 2 freaking heads, one just sort of splitting off from the other at the neck. Again, I shake this off as a trick of the light, albeit a pretty big coincidence getting 2 of those in as many hours. But hey, stranger things can happen, right? The big nope moment came when I got back to the security office a couple of minutes later, and my duty partner asked me, "Who else was up there with you just then?" Now, we had quite the big team on the night shifts, as like I said, it was a real big building, and I know for sure there wasn't no one else up there with me when I did my rounds. I told the guy he must have been pulling my leg, but he swore on his mama's life that he saw someone walking behind me in the corridor. It was only for a split second, but they swore they saw it. Only like I said, we had a big team, so they didn't think anything of it. I quit at the end of that night. 3 shifts in, and that kind of nonsense was happening on like an hourly basis. I'd have to be going out of my mind to stay there a second longer. It isn't like Chi-Town is short on security jobs either. A good one is hard to find, I admit it. But the tide-you-over money comes as easy as work ever wants to. Far too easy for me to stay in a job like that. I've heard some people say they are just pulling a prank on me, hazing the new guy or whatever. But even then, working a security job where your buddies ain't got your back is kind of just asking for trouble, in my opinion. A few years back, I was working the second shift at Colonial Williamsburg. I had started around 1 p.m., but sometimes wouldn't finish until later on at night. Colonial Williamsburg is what they call a living history museum, and it's basically that they kept a part of the city super old, so it's like stepping back in a time machine without any of the paradoxical dangers, so to speak. I used to work there on the weekends when I was in high school, so I was pretty low down the chain, and it was my job to turn off the lights of the governor's mansion and a few other places at the end of the night. This one night, I had just clocked out and was walking to my car when my boss called me and said that I had missed a light. I was still kind of new at the time, and the idea of burning down the Colonial Quarter was just about the most awful thing I could think of, so I apologized a bunch and headed back to correct my mistake. Sure enough, a light way up in the attic was visibly on from outside. I facepalmed super hard, head up there to the attic via the little ladder thing, but once I get up there, there's no lit candles at all. I start applying any and all logic, thinking the light we saw must have been a reflection from somewhere, and besides, it's no big deal. I'm just happy I didn't actually leave a candle on to potentially burn down one of my favorite places in the entire world. So, I shrug it off, head back down the ladder and re-began the walk to my car. But yet again, as I'm walking, I feel my phone vibrating in my pocket, and once again, it's my boss asking if I'm actually going to do my job properly. I immediately text back that I did, and get an incoming call in response. He actually seemed super angry, saying like, "Why are you lying to me? Do you think I'm dumb?" And a small argument unfolded before I turned around and saw that, sure enough, there was a light back on in the window of the old attic. That's when I realized something wasn't quite right, and I calmly asked my boss to meet me outside so we could both make sure the candle was put out properly, together. I'd been a diligent worker for the few weeks I'd been there, but I could tell just from this that my boss thought I was crazy, dumb, or both. I mean, I'd be thinking the same thing. Who can't put out a simple candle? But as I wanted him to see, there was much more at play than that. So I meet him outside, and once we've established that A, no one is playing a prank, and that B, I obviously wouldn't just lie to him, we head over to the house with a lit candle in the loft. As we approach, each of us agrees that we can both see a lit candle up in the window, and by now my boss is past thinking I'm dumb and probably just curious to see what it was talking about. But lo and behold, when we head up into the attic, there's no lit candle. And I made sure to make sure that my boss goes up first so he couldn't accuse me of just snuffing it out like I'm gaslighting him or something. When I get up there, my boss has actually turned pale when he turns to me and says, "You smell that, right?" And sure enough, the distinct odor of a burnt candle could be smelled, and the wick of the candle was still warm and sooty. We're both right on the verge of freaking out entirely, and my boss turns to me like, "You swear you put that candle out the first time?" But just as I'm about to promise him that I did, and that something seriously freaky is going on, we hear this noise from the old wardrobe that made both of us freeze in place. It was this wheezy, raspy sound, exactly like my little cousin made during a horrible asthma attack during her 7th birthday party. I was so scared that I could practically hear my own heartbeat in my ears. I wanted to bolt out, but for some reason I just couldn't bring myself to. My boss turns towards the wardrobe like, Is anyone there?" And then in response, we both just heard the sandpaper voice growl, "Get out." Me and my boss almost knocked each other over trying to get to the ladder, tearing through this old colonial house that we normally treated with kid gloves. Like, I think I'd have honestly smashed my way straight through a wall if I had the strength to. I was literally that terrified. Me and my boss ran to my car, him jumping into the passenger seat and me in the driver's, and we took out of there, not even caring where we were headed, just as long as it was away from Colonial Williamsburg. As I'm driving, I feel my phone start buzzing in my pocket again. I can't answer because I'm driving, but from the call ID, I can see it's from the overnight security guy. I realize that he'd probably just seen, either on camera or in person, me and the boss sprinting out of the house before speeding off in my car, and was wondering what the deal was. Only I realize we've also left him back there with whatever was in the wardrobe, so I'm panicking and telling the boss, "Call Terry. We have to warn Terry." So he does. And right as my boss is telling Terry to get out of there, I just hear like, "Terry, are you kidding me? You literally just scared us half to death." And that's when it hit me. Terry had been hiding up in that attic, lighting the candle, and then putting it out again when he heard someone walk into the house. And I guess scaring the life out of us was his idea of fun, as bored as he must have been. And let me tell you, that was not funny, Terry. Not funny at all. I used to work graveyard shift security at a group of residential/commercial buildings that had been converted from old factories. Old, like 1800s old, and some of the buildings still had a few features from when they were industrial buildings, one of which was the old style of architecture. Some of the interiors had these massive, intricate stone carvings and murals in them, and they wouldn't look out of place as a location for a horror movie, meaning some of my walk-arounds could get pretty creepy later at night. The first building I worked at was commercial only and was almost always completely empty at night after a certain time. It had this old, dusty antique of a freight elevator at one end of the building that honestly seemed like it was around at the time of the Founding Fathers. It was squeaky, creaky, and made noises that you definitely didn't want to hear out of an elevator, but was otherwise safe and functional. Then at the other end was a loft that contained the roof hatch, a hatch which the maintenance guy would sometimes forget to secure, and on windy nights you could hear it banging around. When it was left open, you could also hear the elevator machinery from the floor below when the elevator was in use. Also, this building is 2 floors and laid out as more or less a straight line from end to end, so no one can come or go on the floor that I'm on without me noticing. Anyway, so this was one of the first shifts I had after getting the job there. I was doing a foot patrol of the building and was at the loft end of that building, and I could hear the roof hatch door banging and the buzz of the freight elevator machinery starting up. Obviously, I'm the only person in the building, so after almost having a heart attack along with a metaphorical change of underwear, I went to check the far end of the building to see what was up. There's no one there, but the elevator has moved between floors. No one came out of any of the commercial spaces on the 2nd floor to call the elevator up there. And I know that for a fact because I would have heard them opening and closing their door and moving in the hallway. Also, there's nowhere to go because it's a straight line, except for the fact that this is around a corner, so like I said, if there was anyone else in the building with me, I'm almost certain I would have seen them. It can't be someone on the 1st floor messing with me because there's a call button on each floor, but no way to control the elevator from outside other than that. In order to control the elevator, you have to be inside. There's no way about it. So I would have either seen them in the hall or found them standing in the elevator. Also, this particular elevator is one of those really old manual concertina-style ones, where you have to open and close the doors by hand. And if you know the kind I'm talking about, you'll also know how that's absolutely impossible to do quietly. Also, the elevator doesn't move at all until the doors are closed manually, and the last time I had seen the elevator, it had been on the 1st floor with the doors open. So unless I had legit ninjas in the building with me, something seriously weird was going on that night.